Hey guys, back with part 2 of the underrated games video. And the first game I want to talk about is D2 for the Sega Dreamcast. I've talked about this game before, I think in like a pickups video of some kind, I'm pretty sure. This is a flawed gem, I think. It I do have some nostalgia with this game. I played it back in like 2002, 2001 or 2002. One of my friends had it for the Sega Dreamcast, so admittedly, I'm probably a bit blinded by my nostalgia with this game. And it's a game I don't know too many people, like I don't too many people have played this game. It's a survival horror game, but it's actually pretty unique. It was designed by Kenji Ino, who kind of was like a famous video game designer. Sort of. He's a famous Japanese personality. We'll say that. He died not too long ago, but he did a trilogy of sorts, a trilogy of games. This Enemy Zero and the original D, they don't have connections with each other, but you play as like not the same character, but a character that looks the same in each game and is named Laura. It's really weird. But I think this game is probably the strongest of the three. I haven't actually put too much time into Enemy Zero, but that game's flawed as well. But I could see some people really liking that one. The original D, I did not like at all. It had like this really, it was like you had like a 2-hour time limit, so you had like 2 hours to beat that game. And it was really obtuse. The puzzles were really annoying. The movement speed was atrociously slow. Like, I don't know, I could not get into that game. This game, on the other hand, I could get into. The story is probably the highlight of this game. You're on a plane traveling through like the Canadian like winter wilderness, and like terrorists hijack the plane, and we'll just say it crashes, and you find yourself like in a cabin with another character like 10 days later or something like that, and you have to kind of piece together a mystery. Monsters have basically appeared, and you got to kind of piece together this mystery of why they're here, what they're doing here. It's one of those stories that it seems kind of like typical survival horror in the beginning, but it just gets more and more insane. It's one of the craziest storylines I've seen in a game. And there's some really disturbing stuff in this game for when it came out. When I was a kid playing this game, a lot of the cutscenes were pretty shocking to me. Of course, they probably are very tame nowadays, but I don't know. I thought this game was pretty unique back in the day, and I remember me and my friend, we played through this game. We were so invested in the story. But the gameplay is actually really unique too. It plays like your typical survival horror game where you move around, you find items in the environment, you solve puzzles like say the old school Resident Evil games. But while you're traveling throughout the environments, you can actually run into random battles where they play out in like these first-person shooting sections where you have different weapons and you can't move. But you shoot at enemies in a first-person perspective, and you gain experience points and level up. And you kind of go hunting, like hunting for deer and things like that to get meat to heal yourself. It's really weird, but I thought it was actually really fun. It's not perfect. There's definitely some flaws with the gameplay, but I don't know. I had a good time with it. The storyline's really wacky. Visually, it looks very nice, especially since I find a lot of Dreamcast games hold up visually. The soundtrack is really eerie. The game's got a great atmosphere, and it takes place in a setting that you don't see too often. That kind of winter setting I love for horror like movies and games. I've said before, The Thing is my favorite horror movie of all time, and a big part of that is the setting. I think the setting is really unique in that movie, and it's unique here. So. This game is, I think it's around like $50 or $40 or $50 if you were going on eBay or something like that. So it's kind of getting up there. Enemy Zero is expensive too on the Saturn. So I guess these games are kind of cult classics in a way. This trilogy of games. I think D2 is probably the most playable of the three. So yeah, definitely check it out if you can. It's probably a game that's tough to find in the wild, but. If you definitely see it, definitely pick it up. I think it's a worthy playthrough. Especially if you like survival horror games. I can't see you not enjoying this. If you can get over like the tank controls and odd gameplay issues of old survival horror games, I think this game will not be a problem for you. All right, next game is Donkey Kong Jungle Beat for the GameCube, and they did a Wii version of this game where you don't actually use the bongo controller, and that version is so confusing to me because like that kind of removes makes the GameCube version so unique. And there, there's not much to say about this one. This game is your typical platformer. It plays a bit differently than like the Donkey Kong Country games, because you're using the bongo controller to play this game. I think this was like one of 3 games that used the controller. I think the other 2 games were the music games, which it didn't really appeal to me all that much. But this, when I first saw this game, I immediately was drawn to the concept. I went out and bought this game like day one along with the bongo controller, and I had a blast with this game. I even like almost 100%ed it, which I usually don't do with platformers. I'll usually like beat them and then that's it. But I actually felt compelled to do like get all the medals that you'd find throughout the levels. It was a really fun game. It kind of took the levels were typical platformer levels and bosses, but the bongo controller added a different element to it where you'd like smack the right bongo to move right and smack the left one to move left. You'd like clap to do attacks and grab bananas. The bosses were really fun. There's a lot of like spamming like bongo hits to break. I think like you broke like these banana horde things to get more bananas. It's been a while since I played it, but it's a really fun game. There's a bit of a learning curve with the controller and how you play the game, but once you get into it, I think it's really fun. Visually, it's quite nice. It's got good music from what I remember. It is your typical platformer. It's just played in a very unique way. I don't think it's going to be for everyone, but I had a lot of fun playing it. I think the controller in the game you can get for really cheap nowadays. But I would say stay away from the Wii version. I don't really. Granted, I haven't played it, but I just like it has like regular controls, and to me, this game, I do not think it would be that fun with just regular controls. Like, because as a standard platformer, I don't think it would be all that great. But with the bongo controller, I think it's really unique and it's really fun. And I don't hear too many people talk about this game. I don't think it sold particularly well when it came out. I think the music games did much better. Obviously, I think the bongo controller was kind of like a failed idea, considering there's only 3 games for it and it didn't have much momentum. But I think this is a fun game to go back to, and it certainly is underrated, I feel. Alright, the next game is Phantom Dust for the original Xbox. This game I absolutely love. And of course, they're doing a kind of remake of sorts, a reboot for the Xbox One. Unfortunately, the development studio that was making the new version shut down. There's a whole story behind that that's actually really frustrating. I'll try to link to a Kotaku article about the development of that game. And Microsoft, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. I don't want to say too much on this story. It's very fascinating and frustrating. But I'll link to that article. But apparently Microsoft is now searching for another studio to make this reboot. You know what? I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's probably just going to be a canceled project, unfortunately, which is a shame. Because yeah, this game is, I think, still one of the most unique games out there. Not only just on the original Xbox, but period. It was directed by the guy who I don't remember his name, but he did Panzer Dragoon, Dragoon Zwei, and Saga even. He directed this game, and it's really cool. I remember having a lot of fun with this back on the original Xbox. This might be a little hard to describe. The story is not really the highlight. It's like a post-apocalyptic setting. But your character has these skills. Each skill is kind of on one of the face buttons on the controller. So Y, X, A, and B. And the skills are different types. You have these different types of skills that you use on a battlefield, and you'll be against like one or two. Like, you don't face too many enemies at once, but you have like these big destructible battlefields, and yeah, like everything's destructible, which was a really cool element back in the day. And you can find these random skills kind of thrown throughout the environment. You can like buy them in this like underground city part of the game where you talk to like NPCs and things like that. So you're choosing skills to equip on your character, and there's like at least like over 300 different skills in this game. So it has like a card element to it. I like to consider like the different skills to be different cards that you find. So you're using these different skills to attack your opponents. You have like a certain amount of life, so you're trying to destroy your opponents. based on what I'm saying right now, it doesn't sound too unique, but there's a lot of strategy involved with this game. You really want to be careful with what skills you choose going into each battle. This game had like online back in the day. It doesn't have it anymore, and I didn't actually get to try it because I had like dial-up back when this came out. But I did do a lot of like multiplayer matches. I think there was like you could play against bots, and then there was like split screen that I did quite a bit. But yeah, it was a really unique game. It had that addictive aspect where you were just gathering all these new skills and experimenting with them to see which one you liked best. But yeah, you'd find like random skills. You'd start with like 4 skills right at the start of the battle, but you'd find random ones that you could pick up throughout the environments. So that there was like an element of strategy there. Movement and was a big deal too. I remember jumping was annoying. You had to like click the left analog stick to jump. I remember that was kind of annoying. There was a lot of missions you could go on in the single player mode. The game wasn't perfect. I would have liked maybe like I don't know more than just like a very linear mission structure where you just go to this underground city in between missions. Like maybe a more open ended style of game design, I think, would have been more fascinating. Maybe some more RPG elements, maybe even more customization, although the customization was already quite high. The special effects in this game were awesome, too. Like, visually, it was an amazing game. The music was really moody and dark. I loved, like, the atmosphere was fantastic as well. Really a breath of fresh air on the original Xbox, which I said before in the previous video. I think there are definitely some hidden gems on that system, and this is definitely one of them. It's in terms of pricing, I don't think it's that expensive. I haven't checked in a while, but it could be. Unfortunately, it's one of those games that it's a cult classic, but I remember it didn't sell well upon release, and not too many people played it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a really cool game, really really fun. Okay, the next game is Turok 2: Seeds of Evil for the N64. Okay, now this game is maybe not super underrated. It's hard to go back to these days, but I wanted to talk about it for a few reasons. And I like the main reason is level design. When you play Turok 2 and you compare it to first-person shooters nowadays, it is shocking how level design has changed. It's really fascinating. The levels in Turok 2 are some of the most complex, maze-like, labyrinthian levels ever. They will take you upwards of like an hour to 2 hours long to get through these levels. You will get lost. You will not know what to do. You will die many times over. This game is fucking hard as shit. There's tons of weapons to find, tons of hidden secrets. You'll go on for like 30 minutes without a save point in these levels. It's ridiculous. And it's a game that I've actually never beaten. I'm talking about it here because I have a strong nostalgic attachment to this game. I played it a lot when I was a kid. I actually could only get to the Lair of the Blind Ones. That was like the 4th level. I've never actually beaten that level. It is one of the most difficult and maze-like levels I've ever played in a first-person shooter. And the first 3 levels were big enough. I mean, the first level took me like an hour. The second level took me like 2 hours. The third level took me like another 2 hours. Like, the level design in this game is just crazy. And it's something I wish first-person shooters would go back to. Maybe not necessarily this maze-like and difficult, but it's weird. There's been like this strange regression in level design. Like, first-person shooters nowadays is just straight corridors. And it's like, I don't know, I find that kind of boring. But a game like this, with all of its flaws, like the aiming in this game is really difficult because, you're playing with an N64 controller. The enemies are brutal. They have like ridiculous like auto aim. It's hard to go back to, but I kind of enjoy it in a weird way because this level design is so fascinating to me. You're hitting tons of switches. You'll never know what they do at times. I like this game a lot because it was back in the day because it was really gory. It was like one of the goriest games you could get back in the day. I don't know. As a kid, I was obsessed with gore for some reason. Lots of cool weaponry in this game. You had the cerebral boar, which kind of like it's like this bug kind of thing that jumps into your enemies' heads and like scrambles out their brains and then their heads explode. It was fantastic. A lot of cool weapons. It had like a mine launcher that would like I don't know. There was really cool weapons in this game. I really enjoyed the weapons. Which again, first-person shooters nowadays, you just don't see very unique weaponry. But yeah, it's a game I'd like an HD remake for. So I put it in this video for underrated games, but I recognize that it's pretty hard to go back to these days. However, I would love to see a remake of this game, with proper controls, and don't really change the level design, because it's one of those games like people that play it now aren't going to get very far. They'll probably get like maybe 20 minutes into the first level and give up due to the controls and visuals and things like that. The frame rate is pretty rough in this game too. It was rough back in the day. But I would love for people to see just how crazy the level design was in this game. And, a lot of shooters back in the day were like this. They had really confusing, super complex levels. Even like Perfect Dark, which is, a classic game. You go back to that game and the levels, like, there's just so many objectives and ways to get through them, and they're, like, totally not linear. But yeah, this game is on a whole other level. It's ridiculous. And very difficult too. I've never beaten it. You can like have cheats. I've beaten it with cheats, obviously, but and some of those later levels without cheats, I don't think I could ever get through them. But it's one of those games I want to see an HD remake, because I think it's like level design wise, I think a lot of games could learn a thing or two from this game. But not to say it's perfect. I mean, again, I think it's probably a bit too much. But yeah, it's always gonna have like, I'm always gonna be nostalgic for this game, and I'm always gonna consider it kind of underrated. Although I think that's more of a factor of like what it was like back in the day. Because back in the day, this was kind of like a landmark first-person shooter. Probably not so much nowadays. Alright, the next game is Baten Kaitos for the GameCube. I still haven't played Origins, which is like the prequel to this one on the GameCube. I really need to get to it, because this is a fantastic game. Very underrated RPG on the GameCube. Developed by Monolith Soft, actually. Of course, known for Xenoblade. And this game, I think a lot of people tend to stay away from this game due to the card-based battle system. I think a lot of people are scared by that. And I know a lot of people that just, if any game has anything to do with cards, nope, they will just not play it. And that's kind of a shame, because I think despite that, this game has a really unique battle system. I mean, it generally plays like a typical JRPG, just, you're using cards for your attacks and collecting different cards instead of your basic, RPG type attacks. I think it kind of sets this game apart. The story is admittedly not the greatest. It's decent. The characters I don't think are all that likable, and the voice acting in this game is terrible. Like, not only is it like just terrible in general, but the quality, like the audio quality of the voice acting is terrible. Like, it's got like this ring to it. It's hard to describe, but it's very jarring and just, I don't know, it's irritating. But the game is beautiful to look at. Like, it's a stunning game. Like, the environments are absolutely amazing. So there's definitely that aspect to it that I really appreciate. But yeah, all in all, it really comes down to like the battle system and how you level up. Like, the gameplay in general is just really unique and something I haven't really seen before. And I think Origins apparently improves a lot of aspects, and it ramps up the challenge quite considerably. Because I think this game, like, I think I beat it without dying. This game, I don't think I died once. Like, it was kind of like, it was a very easy game, but it was still really enjoyable. So, I mean, there's not much to say, but I don't want to get into this game too in depth, because I think there's a lot of cool things to see once you get into the game yourself and kind of understand how the battle system works. It's certainly got a bit of a learning curve, but once you kind of get into things and understand how it works, it's really fun. And it's got that collecting aspect that's very entertaining as well. So, I think this game is starting to get a bit pricey now. Like most JRPGs do, they start to hike up in price. And being one of the few RPGs on the GameCube, obviously that's going to happen. I think Origins is the more expensive of the two. But I think this is a good starter game. It's definitely, like, as far as GameCube games, it's I think a must own, as long as you're, I guess, into RPGs. But yeah, very underrated game. Alright, and the last game I want to talk about is Otogi 2. Actually, I'll lump both games in here. And these are actually the only From Software games I had played before the Souls series. Both games are on the original Xbox exclusives, and I really enjoyed these back in the day. Gameplay-wise, they're not really unique or anything. They're your typical hack-and-slash games, similar to, say, Devil May Cry. Although, they do remind me of, like, the Dynasty Warriors games in some ways, with the amount of enemies on screen and the amount of levels you'll be going through. I think the sequel is probably the better game. There's, like, 6 characters you get to choose from. They each have their different weapons, and I think some of them even have some magic abilities. I think there was just more variety in the second one, although both of them are quite lengthy, a lot of levels. The big thing with these two games when they came out, I remember was like the destructible environments. Like that was a very new thing back when these games came out, and you could like break like almost the entire everything on the level. You could pretty much break, and you'd find like different items and things when you'd break stuff open. So you were rewarded for doing that. The combat was really fast, really fun. These games were difficult from what I remember, so in typical From Software fashion. But admittedly, there's not too much to say about them. I mean, they're very flashy. Visually, they're excellent. They hold up very well. I like the music. They had the style of these games was just really great. So if you're into hack and slash games, I think these are no-brainers. I don't think they're very expensive either. I could be wrong. They might be those games that have went up in price, especially now that the Soul series is more popular. You probably have a bunch of people wanting to go back and check out From Software's back catalog. But yeah, these are great games that I think hold up to the test of time. Granted, though, I think you have to be into that hack and slash style of game, or else you're probably not going to find much to enjoy here. But yeah, very underrated. Nothing spectacular or anything. I certainly prefer the Soul series, but definitely some highlights on the original Xbox, and they do make me want to go and check out some of From Software's other games. I definitely got to do that at some point. But yeah, that's it, guys. Those are all the games I want to talk about. I'm sure there's a few more I could have thought of. I might do like a part 3 in the future. But yeah, what are some games you guys thought were underrated that maybe I don't know about? But yeah, what do you think of these games? Have you played them? But yeah, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.